Okay, this would be video 4 concerning the origin here of this hair business connected to the supposed sacred feminine. And I basically dubbed it Hairayans. So let me go ahead and read this all the way through here, and then we'll see some evidence for what I was telling you concerning Gilgamesh and Enkidu being the same character. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about this Warka. And then in the next video, I'm going to show you some iconography of the ancient character that we're being seen called Gilgamesh in ancient China, which will give us some historical precedents for the great antiquity of this character that would precede the stories that were then compiled about him. And then this is where we see the confusion is, where they have separated the identity, at least in my mind, and created an Enkidu character to confuse the idea of this primitive state of man in which these sons of God unified with, which now is considered a portion of some supposed genetic superiority connected to Aryans. So let me go ahead and read, and then we'll talk further. The city which Gilgamesh and his father ruled is firmly identified as modern Warka in central Iraq. Excavations by German archaeologists have shown that it was enormously important in the late 4th millennium BC, with an elaborate central complex of monumental architecture. The city originally consisted of 2 separate towns on either side, probably of a canal. In one town, the chief patron deity was the sky god An, or Anu. In the other, it was Inanna Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Now, interesting, the goddess of love and war. According to traditions, the emanate from Uruk, as does this epic. According to traditions that emanate from Uruk, as does this epic, Inanna was the daughter of An, and the great temple which she inhabited was called Eanna, which could be translated as House of An or the sky. And this is where we're going to connect with that moon. So there is a close connection between the 2 deities, and together they play a part at a crucial moment in the epic. Also associated with the city of Uruk is a very early tradition of literacy, and the same is true of Shuruppak, the city of Utnapishtim. Early cuneiform and pre-cuneiform clay tablets have been found on both sites. But this fact cannot be connected with the epic as written literature, for there is no evidence that any of the Gilgamesh stories were written down before about 2150 BC. The so-called Gilgamesh figure, a hero shown grappling masterfully with wild animals on cylinder seals and sculptures, is attested much earlier than any of the written Gilgamesh stories. Earlier even than the putative existence of the hero as a king of Uruk. Perhaps at times this powerful traditional image was associated with Gilgamesh, but other associations, for instance, with Nergal, Enkidu, or Shakan, were probably also valid at different periods of extreme antiquity in Mesopotamia. Now there's validation for the line of thinking that I have here. As you can see, the written tales about Gilgamesh come much later after the iconography of the traditional image of this great hero grappling with wild animals is found. Now let's think about the description of Enkidu, of being connected to these wild animals, running with wild animals, being with wild animals. And then here, this book itself is giving us a connection that Gilgamesh could be connected to either Nergal, Enkidu, or Shakan, which is interesting here. We could see something connected here with Satan and the association with Samyeza in the Book of Enoch. But at least I'd like you to see that the traditional image that we can show you even in ancient China of Gilgamesh grappling with these animals, of course we see it connected even with lions, predates the stories that were compiled about him. Now my line of thinking is that these stories were compiled in such a way to purposely confuse people from the original ancestry of these genetically supposed superior Aryans that was connected to this hair, and which we see carries on all the way into the times of Samson, and his power was supposedly his hair. And I have always said that that was a link to the genetics and a link to the origin of the genetics in which they would believe their superiority came from. So I think that you could see that here. You know, you could see that here. So let's read this again. Perhaps at times this powerful traditional image was associated with Gilgamesh, but other associations, for instance, with Nergal, Enkidu, and Shakan. So we could see this image that is attested to of Gilgamesh is also most probably attested to as a singular Enkidu. And then, as you would see later in history, they would compile the story in such a way to where Enkidu now becomes a secondary character entirely separate from Gilgamesh, in which I'm telling you he was the same character as Gilgamesh, and that they are trying to hide that from your understanding. That is my personal belief. Now, if we are to go here, they're sending a lot of trains by because I'm doing these videos. Isn't that interesting? If we go here back to War Ka, we're going to talk about this war on the Ka, which is the soul. I'll be back.